Hey, it's Al again. Just thought I'd give you a little synopsis of our New England cruise. We left from Arizona on the 19th of May. We discovered the day before we were to leave that we didn't have any transportation to the airport. Somehow we got mixed up on who was supposed to get the transportation. So we were able to find a driver to take us, however. When we loaded the Traverse at 3 a.m. for our 6 a.m. flight, there was another couple besides our four that we had to pick up. After driving for about 30 minutes to the other side of Surprise to pick them up, we found out that they had 4 huge bags, and we were crammed in like sardines. The total luggage count after everyone was in the car was 14 pieces. I couldn't see out the side window. I couldn't see out the back window. I was sitting in the back. I couldn't see out the front window. I was just surrounded by bags. Well, we arrived at the airport with about an hour and a half to spare. And of course, there were only 2 clerks at the check-in counter for our bags. Finally got through the check-in and went to the security line. Got through there fairly quick. By the time we got to the gate, which is at the other end of the airport, they'd already loaded everyone on the plane, and they were getting ready to close the gates. There was only one person behind me when they loaded the plane, and that was one of the stewardesses. Our next stop, Detroit, was a layover of about an hour and a half, and it was a 2-hour flight from Detroit to Montreal. But the connection flight was a smaller plane, smaller seats, and it wasn't quite as comfortable as the first leg of the trip. When we got to Detroit, we left and went to Montreal. And when we got to Montreal, there were Regent agents ready for us, picked us up at the airport, and took us by bus to the Sofitel Montreal Golden Mile Hotel. The check-in went fine for us, but not so much for Rusty and Paul. Someone was already in their rooms in bed when they opened the door. A quick retreat was made and a new room assignment acquired. The next morning, we had a motor coach transfer from the hotel to the Seven Seas Navigator, and we got there. They picked us up at 12, and we were on board the ship by 1, and we set sail at 6 o'clock for Quebec City. So Quebec City is our next stop. Quebec City, we arrived at 8 o'clock in the morning. And our excursion for the day was the Quebec Walk and High Tea at Chateau Frontenac. Quebec City is a 400-year-old town, and it is the only walled city in North America. I wasn't feeling so well at this point. I had a sore throat, chest congestion. So we tried to find a drugstore after the tour and just kind of walked around on our own. Had no such luck. We got lost and wandered for about an hour trying to get back to the ship. Well, we made it back with 30 minutes to spare before the ship sailed. And the next day, the next port was down the St. Lawrence River from Quebec City to Baie-Comeau. Baie-Comeau, on May 22nd, my birthday, I was still sick. We didn't have an excursion plan, so we just got off the ship and walked into town. We were still looking for a drugstore, at least for some throat lozenges. No such luck. I guess people don't get sick in Canada, because we sure couldn't find any drugstores. We did go to an antique store and saw a full basement of Coca-Cola memorabilia. Then back to the ship, I decided time to go to the infirmary. Had a terrible sore throat by this time. I spent 3 hours in the medical facility. Tested for COVID, influenza, Legionella, and strep. Strep wins. I had IV with antibiotics and saline, 10 days of oral antibiotics, almost immediate sore throat relief, Good thing for travel insurance. Bill for treatment, 4 hours worth of treatment, $3,700. What a birthday. Ordered a hamburger in my room and went to bed. The next day, we just cruised the Gulf of St. Lawrence. It was a relaxing day. We didn't have anything else to do. The next day, we were supposed to go to Corner Brook, which is over here, but they told us there were icebergs in the water and we couldn't go there. So instead of going over to Corner Brook, we went down here to Prince Edward Island. And Prince Edward Island was Charlottetown was the name of the town on Prince Edward Island instead of Corner Brook. And at Charlottetown, we went to a lobster on the wharf and watched a guy put a live lobster to sleep in his hands. We had a lobster roll, and I had my first and last raw oyster with wasabi. We continued on with the tour and stopped at the world's best French fry hut. At least that's what the lady said, and they were good. It has something to do with the soil where they grow the potatoes. So after we left Charlottetown, then we cruised around to Sydney, Canada, and we took the Bras d'Or Lakes Grand Tour of Highland Village. It was a 50-acre historical site at the center of Cape Breton Island. This was not a good day. Rain and wind start to finish. The tour guide was not prepared. She had on a light jacket and the rain was practically going sideways. She was soaked after the first step off the bus. She had an umbrella, but the wind was so strong, it turned it inside out immediately. I tried to help her, but she couldn't handle the umbrella. Practically every umbrella was a total loss this day. We visited a Highland village. We were supposed to go around and listen to the people speaking in each one of the historical huts, but the weather was so bad and so cold, we just bypassed all those and headed to the church and got some hot cocoa. Then we got back on the bus and visited Alexander Graham Bell's museum, which was very interesting, all the things that he did. Then the next day, our next port was Halifax, Nova Scotia. Our excursion in Halifax was Peggy's Cove Coastal Tour, which was a rustic fishing village with a lighthouse on a dramatic rock formation. Beautiful, beautiful spot. And we took the bus tour, took us all around Halifax for the rest of the tour. Next port was Shelburne, Canada. Shelburne, Nova Scotia. Our excursion was a waterfront walk. We went through an old shipbuilding museum. And on our way back to the ship, we saw the beginnings of the Shelburne County Forest Fire off in the distance, which is now really a large fire in northwest or southwestern Nova Scotia. The next day, headed off to Bar Harbor, Maine. And it was a grand tour of Bar Harbor. And the bus took us around Acadia National Park. We stopped for a lunch of whole Maine lobster that we had to open ourselves. And then we went for a drive to the top of Cadillac Mountain. The next stop was Boston. stop in Boston, the excursion was the hop-on, hop-off trolley. Around the town in the trolley. We rode the Swans boat in Boston Commons Park, saw 32,000 American flags placed to honor servicemen lost. Next day, Newport, Rhode Island. Newport, Rhode Island excursion was to visit the Vanderbilt Mansion and the Marble Mansion. And that was about a half day. And then the final leg of the cruise took us to New York City, where we took a tour, a bus tour, about a 5-hour bus tour of New York City, because our plane wasn't set to take off till 6, and we had to be off the ship at 9 o'clock in the morning. And we walked around downtown in Times Square. They dropped us off at the airport in New Jersey at about 4 o'clock. And our plane took off at 6, and we arrived back in Arizona at about 8:30. We did have transportation back. Everything went smooth from there. So we had a few hiccups on the trip, but it was a beautiful, beautiful cruise. And anybody that likes to cruise, there's just a lot of scenery and a lot of things to see. We'd never been to that part of Canada, even that part of the northeastern United States. So that's all I have for now. Bye for now.